This is a short tutorial on Codio Challenge 3.1 List Sum. In this challenge, we're going to learn how to sum up a list of integers. Now, there are a few things to look at for what we're given in this Codio challenge. As always, we have import sys. We get that with all of our Codio challenge. This allows us to get data from the outside of Codio into the program, into our Python script. And in this case, we're also given a variable numbers, and we know it's a variable because it's on the left-hand side of the equal sign. We're going to be passed in something because we have our old friend sys.argv of 1, and we also know that we're going to do something new here because we haven't really seen this split notation before. And I'll show you in a second what the split notation actually does. But what we're doing is we're bringing in a string. It's whenever Codio gives us anything, whenever we bring in anything from the outside world to Python, it's a string. So we're going to then split that string into a list. That's what the split function does. And the notation of dot just says I want to act on on whatever the element is directly preceding the dot. So in this case, I'm going to act on what Codio is giving us. I'm going to split it, and that just does what it says. It goes and chops that string up. And I'm going to split it every time I see a comma. So the comma goes away and you split it into a list. So let's look quickly on how that works. Okay, I'm not going to import from outside at this point. I'm just going to say I have a string, and that string is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now it's a string. All it is a string, but it's a comma separated string. We'll see commas here between every single one of these variables. So if I use similar notation to what's up here, I can say my list is equal to my stir dot split, and I'm going to split on a comma. And then I'm going to print my list. Now, don't worry about the output here. It's going to be wrong. But what I wanted you to see here is that my program output is in fact a list. Python tells us it's a list because, as we said previously, it is an open square bracket and then a closed square bracket. So I have a list. But this is a list of string. So I really can't do anything with that for this problem because I'm supposed to sum. But we know how to take care of that. So I'm going to comment out the extra lines I put in as an example of what the split function does. And I'll just write that here as a comment. And I'll comment those out. And now we'll get to our program. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I know that Codio is sending me in a list of strings. That list of strings is going to be translated into a list of strings. And then I have to sum that up. Well, let's start by just looking at what's in that list. Okay, so I'm going to do a for loop. Now, for loop is what you generally use over lists. So if you're using a list, start out with a for loop. So I'm going to say for n, which is just my throwaway variable for the for loop, in this case numbers. Always remember the colon, and I'm just going to print n for right now. Okay? Remember, we're working on numbers because that's what Codio gave us. So if I check it, things are still going to be wrong. My output's going to be wrong. That's fine. This is what Codio gave us. It gave us a string, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. my output is a list, as you can see, 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9, because I printed each individual element. So now, to sum it, I have to do two things. First, I have to give myself a helper variable, so I have some place to put the summation. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to call my helper variable sum, and I'm going to set it equal to 0 to begin with. Now, as we look at blocks in conditionals and in loops, it needs to be left-hand justified for the entire script to see it. If it's tabbed over even one to the right, you're either going to get a syntax error or you're not going to be able to use it. Now, so for our utility variables, we always want them left justified and we want them outside a loop or a conditional, at least for this program. So what am I going to do with this sum? Well, sum, I'm going to say sum is sum plus n, because n represents each individual element in the list. And then I know I can use sum because it's left justified. And now I'm going to say print sum. Now, this is going to give me an error, and I'll tell you in a second why. This is a common Codio error, a common Python error. And what it's telling me is that it says type error. So there's something wrong with the type of the variable I'm trying to use. And it said unsupported operand. Basically, you can't use plus to try and add an integer and a string. Well, sum is an integer. So that means n has to be an integer. But because we haven't done anything up here other than split it, everything in the list of numbers is still a string. So I have to use the integer function to convert it to an integer so that I can actually add things together. And when I do that, my output is correct. So this was a short tutorial on how to sum information or integers in a list.